Well, that was a nice little mellow intro for an episode that's going to be all about taking it light and easy. Angela and I were talking last week, and we thought about, what can we do for a topic coming up? And she said, let's do something light and easy. And I said, that's a really good idea. So that's what we're going to do. And we didn't really know what to talk about, but we do have a lot of questions and answers that we prepared for the Q&A episode. So that will be something that we can do, and maybe just get some feedback from you all too. You're part of this podcast, so you can call us, you can text your comments into the chat feature in Facebook and so forth. Angela, I thought I might start by reading some news and some events that are coming up. Does that sound okay for you?
Yeah, sure.
Well, one thing I wanted to announce is on August the 29th, there's going to be a webinar that's being put on by the Freethinkers Living Sober group from Verdi Valley, Arizona. And it's called Emotional Sobriety. And it's going to feature Dr. Alan Berger, Maria Hornbacher, Josie, and John R. from the Freethinkers Living Sober group will be the moderator. And that's going to start at noon Pacific Daylight Time. It's going to go from noon to 3. That's 3 to 6 Eastern Daylight Time. And so that should be pretty good. That should be pretty interesting. Hey, Tracy, how you doing? Good to see you there. And so, and Dr. Alan Berger, he wrote a book on emotional sobriety, and in his website, it's got some really interesting information. I think that we talked about that at one time. And then Maria Hornbacher, if you're not familiar with her, she wrote the book Waiting, A Non-Believer's Higher Power, and her writing is just wonderful. So, and she's a great speaker, so that should be really an interesting thing to do. And you can register for that. Just go to the I'll put a link out there for you so you can find it. But it's also, if you go to the events page on the Secular AA website, you can find it as well. But here's a little link. There you go.
Cool.
Go there. Yeah, you can register for the thing.
I'm already registered, but
yeah, I am
cool
too.
That you got it in there.
Yeah, so people can find that. And then something else I thought I'd announce. This is hard to believe that this is happening, but on September the 2nd, AA Beyond Belief will be 5 years old. We've been doing this for 5 years. I know. Can't believe it.
That is wild.
Yep. The first podcast episode was September 13th of 2015. And it was like a little 15-minute blurb I did of talking about what I thought the podcast would be and so forth. And, it's interesting. It's actually unfolded the way that I thought it might. It's an opportunity for people to share their stories as, secular people in AA. And we've kind of branched out a little bit, got to interview some authors, and we did movie reviews, and now we're doing live streams. So we've done some different things, but it's been a lot of fun. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years. So in September, Angela, we're going to have to do some sort of special episode or something to celebrate.
That sounds good. We'll figure that out. We have several weeks to figure it out.
Yeah, we do have several weeks. It'll be here before you know it, though. Mm-hmm. And then I'm just going to talk about this because I think this is really interesting. I got a letter from the London Freethinkers group. It's called the London Agnostic Atheist Freethinkers Group. And they were the group that actually were responsible for getting the God Word pamphlet published by the General Service Office in England, in the United Kingdom. And they wrote a letter that we're going to post on the AA Beyond Belief website on Sunday. But they were writing in response to John H's blasting of the God Word pamphlet. He called it the God Word Delusion. He wrote a thing about it where he just kind of blasted it. And they wrote a very nice response to it. But what I really liked about it was the history that was contained in their letter. They went through, a lot of detail about what was involved with getting that pamphlet published in the UK, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. And it didn't turn out the way that they wanted it. But they did feel that it was a good start. And I tend to agree with them because you can always change it. Now we've got something there that we can add to and change and revise. And I really don't think there'll be a problem doing that. So
Yeah.
Anyway, that's going to come out Sunday, and I think that you'll like reading that. It's really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, that was. You know, and I met the woman. I can't remember her name, but she was at the Austin conference in 2016, and she was somebody who was really instrumental in getting that pamphlet through as well. And she talked about it, and she admitted too that it wasn't perfect. But one thing I found really interesting is that London group who started it, they all wrote stories that they wanted to have put into the pamphlet, and not one of their stories was included.
Oh,
I know. So I reached out to them. I said, I'd like to have them on the podcast because I'd like to know more. I'd like to know, are those stories still in existence? I'd love to get some of those, you know? So yeah, that was really interesting. I was so glad to hear from them. So something did come good from publishing John's obnoxious critique of the God Word pamphlet.
Yes, he has a voice, and and there are people that stay sober because they agree with how he thinks about things. So, yeah.
But it kind of showed me that it was actually useful to put something out like that because it triggered this other group to write. So it gives you that dialogue, and their response was really very polite, very reasonable. But more than anything, it was informative. So I was really,
very cool.
Yeah, I was really excited about that. What else? Oh yeah, ICSA, the International Conference of Secular AA. We're going to be putting on a online conference this autumn. We don't really have a date yet for it, but it's going to probably be towards the end of October. And it'll be like, kind of like just a mini conference, but it'll be online. So there'll be speakers, there'll be panels and that kind of thing. So we'll put more information out about that. And if you're interested in participating, I'm sure that there'll be room for that. So it'll probably be done on Zoom or something along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's about it. There is a website for secular AA that a lot of people don't know about, and it's called aasecular.org. And there's not a lot on there right now, but we're looking for a website person. If you know of somebody, if you're interested in being a webmaster for secular AA, send me an email, john@aabeyondbelief.org. But right now, the one thing that is on there that I did work on was I put up a pretty comprehensive list of online meetings. It's by certainly it's not complete, but there's a lot of good online meeting information on there and any other event. And if you wanted to add an event on there, you can add your own event. You can add your own online meeting. So anyway.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there's a little bit of news for you. Anything that you want to talk about, Angela, that you know of that's going on that people should know about?
No.
Okay.
I think you covered everything that I know about.
Okay.
I will say happy birthday or happy anniversary or milestone to all the people in our community that is celebrating one today and in the last week. I did see today particularly that there are a lot of them in our Facebook group, and that's really cool. So that was really nice to see. There were 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 people that were celebrating anniversaries in the Facebook group. So that's fun. That's always good to see that people are getting some support. Here's a link to the events page at the Secular AA website there for you. Okay, cool.
So shall we get into the questions and answers?
Sure.
Well, I've got a list of 20. I've crossed out some. Okay. I think I'll ask you an easy one first, and it'll probably trigger some good discussion, I'm hoping.
Okay.
And I don't know if I've ever asked you this one, but what was your first AA meeting like? What were your first impressions of the meeting, Angela? Your first meeting.
Okay. Well, like the first meeting when I got sober.
Yeah.
Because the first meeting that I went to, there I could take this several ways. There was Alateen, and so that was an introduction to AA. So I went to technically some AA meetings through that. But the first one, so I got sober in September, but in January, there was a major event that happened that made me know, that I needed to get sober. So that's when I looked up AA and to see if they'd become, any less religious. And there was the, a newcomer asks pamphlet, and it says something along the lines of that AA is open to all people, all religions and non-religion or something like that. And so I'm like, yay, they've progressed. And I went to a meeting and they were godding all over the place.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, this is not for me. And so I think at that point I went and found a boy, at the bar,
Oh, wow.
who had mentioned something about needing to drink less, and talked him into trying to stay sober with me. So we were, sober, a sober couple for like a month, and then decided that we were, able to handle that, and so therefore we must be okay, and went back to drinking. Yeah, and so then I didn't attempt again until after Burning Man that year, because really, if you're gonna quit, you might as well wait till after Burning Man. That's my logic.
Sure.
But
makes sense.
In September of 2006, I was walking home from the bar, and I was still coherent enough to know that I was so depressed, and to consider taking a leap off the bridge over the Boise River.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking, and and there was just part of me that wanted to live. So I ended up going home and calling the suicide support hotline and talking with them, and they directed me to one of the local emergency rooms to get checked out for detoxing and all of that stuff, and then I went to a place that at that time, it doesn't exist anymore, but that it was kind of like a safe house type place for people who had either mental health or, whatever emergencies, and was there for a couple of days, and then got out and went to my first AA meeting. And it was in the basement of a Mennonite fellowship. And just these awful creaky stairs that were too narrow. They just were not up to code in any way. And I chose that meeting because, probably almost a decade before, it couldn't have been a decade. So probably like 5 years before, a friend of mine's boyfriend got sober, and he talked about this meeting in particular having good snacks. And so I decided on my meeting based on snacks. Yeah. And, and it was scary, but it was one of those ones where they go around the room and you have to introduce yourself and say, that you're an alcoholic. And so each person goes around and does it. They don't say sobriety dates, which some meetings do, but this one was just and I said it, and I don't know, something about it made me feel at home. And it could have just been like from my Alateen years that, it felt familiar to me. And I, listened in the meeting, and they called on me, even though I didn't raise my hand, or, volunteer. And I said that, that I was an alcoholic, and that I don't know if I could do this because I'm an atheist. And they gave me a 24-hour coin, and then two women wrote down their phone numbers for me. And one of them I wouldn't call because she was a neighbor, and I was sure she was spying on me. And then the other one said that she really needed me to call. And so, being part, codependent, I'm like, well, if she needs me to call, I don't want her to go out because I didn't call her. And so that's what started my sobriety, was that meeting, and called her the next day, and she asked how it was, and I said awful, and she's like, great, go to a meeting and call me in the morning. And so she was my temporary sponsor until people could direct me to a group that had more free thinking people in it, and that's where I met my first sponsor.
I remember.
How about you?
Oh, I'll tell you about that, but I remember you telling me about you being an Alateen. Did you like being an Alateen when you were a kid?
Did I like it? Um, yeah, actually. Yeah, when I started, I think I was 12. Yeah, so there was something about it. I think it's really more helpful for kids in that age group. As well. So younger teens, barely teens or preteens. Yeah, it gave me some people to hang out with that it felt normal to talk about, your parents being alcoholics
Ah,
and the stupid things they did, or,
yeah.
not visiting you, or, yeah.
I bet that was a relief. It probably gives you
Yeah.
some good skills for later in life too.
Well, that was the idea, but a lot of us ended up in
Some of
AA.
you still end up in AA anyway.
So
But
yeah, I remember one of the teens being the speaker at the annual conference, and them asking what she wanted to do when she grew up, and she said, "Hopefully, not be an AA."
there you go.
But yeah, so yeah, it was good. I think that I did a lot of social stuff with those guys. We went to like the local conferences and hung out and went to the pool and things, the Alateen sponsors were cool people. I remember one of them gave me a sponsor bear. Did you ever have sponsor bears?
No, I never heard of such a thing.
It was a teddy bear that had a T-shirt on it that said sponsor, and then you'd squeeze it, and it'd say things like "one day at a time" and "take it easy," and all the slogans. So yeah, so it was a speaking sponsor bear.
Pretty clever.
And yeah. So that was fun. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. There was some difficulties I saw as I got older. I remember at 14 noticing some of the other kids in the group spending what my adult self would probably say too much time with some of the guys in AA. And so, but in general, I think for preteens, it really was a good place to feel normal at a time when you're not feeling normal, and then sharing things like, yeah, my mom threw all my dad's stuff out on the lawn and nobody's talking about it, and he just passed out there, and blah blah blah, and I got all of my mom's stash out and put it next to the sink so she'd actually drink it because she's being such an awful person when she tries to get sober, so things like that. It was good for me, at least, I think.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Bree said that she has a daughter in Alateen. Her Alateen daughter is one of us, and the non-Alateen daughter is one of those weirdos who can drink one glass of wine at a meal. How about that?
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, my first meeting, Angela, was, I think I've talked about it before, but it was, first of all, I went there a couple of times, maybe 3 or 4 times, to the door, but didn't actually go in. It just was kind of freaky for me to actually go into the meeting itself.
Right.
But then I was fired from my job. They confronted me about my drinking and ended up firing me. And that's what actually got me to go into the meeting itself. And I was the first one in the room. Nobody else had gotten there yet. So it was just me in a small room, and they had the 12 steps and 12 traditions on the wall. And then eventually somebody came in and offered me some coffee, and he was just a real mellow guy and made me feel kind of relaxed. And the meeting took place, and I was nervous. I didn't say anything, but I felt a sense of hope there. I identified with what the people were saying, but what was really powerful for me is when they were sharing their stories about their bottom, I guess what got them into AA, they had the same kind of stories that I had and experiences I had, but they were dressed nice, like they were going to work, and they seemed like they had themselves together. And I think that's what connected me with this sense that there was something there that could help me. I at the time, I didn't grow up in a religious person at all. I didn't go to church. I was kind of totally ignorant about religion. But at the end, when they did the Lord's Prayer, it totally shocked me. Me. I think that was the first time ever in my life I actually held hands and prayed with people. It was really odd, but I was a pretty desperate person. So I didn't really let that bother me too much. But yeah, that was my experience anyway. So, And by the way,
Yeah.
the phones are open if you want to call and share your experience of like what your first meeting was like, or if you have a question you want to ask or anything like that, please do feel free to call, whatever you want to talk about. You know, it's 844-899-8278.
Yeah, I was prepared for it since I went to Alateen, so I knew that that was going to be there.
Yeah.
I guess, or I
you were
figured
hoping
it
that they
would.
might have kind of toned it down a little bit.
Yeah, since
so.
they were getting all over the place at the last one, then, you know, pretty sure that the Lord's Prayer was going to be there. But I didn't say it. I did hold hands and just sat there. And it was actually helpful when, you know, I think a month or so later, someone, you know, came up to me and said, you know, one of these days you are going to have to start saying the Lord's Prayer. And I think that could be one of the things that kept me going to AA as an atheist, was like, no, I'm not. And so in order to prove that, it requires me to stay in AA.
Right.
I can't just get sober and leave. You know, that proves that I can get sober without God, but it doesn't prove that, you know, the Lord's Prayer thing. So,
and speaking of that, speaking of the God thing too, I have a question here that is often debated in the Facebook groups.
Oh,
yes, it is. What are your thoughts about spirituality?
What are my thoughts about spirituality?
Tough one.
Yeah, that is, because I don't know. I don't usually debate it.
No, I try to stay out of those debates too.
So it's like, it's not really that important to me what other people think. It's just if they want to, you know, make me think like them, or insist that the way they think about. Right. So I often disagree with people, even in the group and stuff, who say, well, you know, this, or if you believe in this, then you're not an atheist, or you're not this, or whatever. You know, I just find most of that really not helpful. So yeah, I don't know. I guess, you know, if using the term spirituality is helpful, then cool, use it. I know that some people hate that word more than God, you know, so they're okay with using like God language, but they don't like the word spirituality. And so there's all sorts of, you know, different ways to think about it and consider it. Yeah. For some people, they really like the term spiritual because, as most of them say, it comes from, you know, a Latin word that means to breathe, and, you know, so there's, you know, things like that can be helpful in it. And it's a good way to be able to stay within, you know, some traditional, groups and still be able to speak and be a part of, if you use language in terms of spirituality. So I think it can be helpful in a lot of ways. And also, people are just at different levels in their thinking and their life story and stuff. And so I don't want to take anything away from them.
We have a caller.
Like, yeah, okay.
You want to take it? Shall we? I hope if this is the person I argued with last week, I will apologize to him.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, I hear you. How are you?
This is Fred in Virginia.
Oh, my goodness. I should have known that was you, Fred. What's up with you?
I was listening to you question about spirituality.
Okay.
And I was thinking of the six senses.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you see, touch, feel, and all those things. But when somebody smiles at you, it's out of the realm of feelings. Yet you know somebody likes you.
Oh.
So that's all you have to think about.
Oh, I like that.
If somebody's smiling at you, maybe they like you.
I like that. Well, thank you. Thank you for the comment. I kind of like that. You know, the way I feel about spirituality is it's just basically language. I don't really get hung up about it. When I was first coming to my, you know, realizing I was an atheist and I was in AA and everything, I was going to maintain my spiritual outlook because that's all I knew. But over time, I just kind of evolved into a more practical approach so that I don't really use that language, but I'm okay with it when other people do. And like you said, Angela, as long as someone doesn't tell me that I need to do as they are doing, then I'm okay with whatever anyone does. I kind of like it. I kind of like the fact that there's enough diversity even amongst us atheists and agnostics that some of us are spiritual, and some of us aren't, and I think that's great. I don't really have a problem with it. But yeah, to me, it's just language. It's just the way you choose to describe something, and it's kind of like poetry or music or something like that. But I tend to be more of a practical person now and just kind of, just talk about what I actually do, I guess, rather than what I believe. So, well, thanks for calling, Fred. It's nice to hear from you again.
I have another comment, if you want.
Okay, go ahead.
I was thinking, Angela, what about the dark side of spirituality, where you have somebody that you had as a relative in a life that you remember from the past that has influenced you through some odor of smell or taste, that you remember something that they did for you and you recall something they said, like a premonition. That would be a most interesting thing, don't you think?
Yeah, that would be interesting. I'm not sure that I've ever experienced that, but it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find it interesting. I know someone who's atheist that goes to church because she likes the way that it feels, the community.
Yeah. Well, Fred, thank you again for calling. I'm going to go ahead and let you go now so we can move on. But thank you very much for calling. I always appreciate your calls into the show, and it's always nice to talk to you.
I don't know what happened to the phone. Thank you for it. I couldn't hear what your comments were.
Oh, you couldn't hear? You can't hear me now?
Barely now. I don't know what happened to the phone. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay.
I wish a good show. Thank you.
All right, take care. Take care, Fred. Bye-bye. Yeah, I try something different with the phone every once in a while. And there's two ways. This is really kind of geeky. There's two ways of doing the phone. I'm not going to get into it. I'm trying way 2, which is a little bit different. Okay. I'm trying to get a better quality, but anyway, there you go. So Sonia, she came to her first meeting. Am I getting this right? She went to some traditional meetings, but she was turned off. So she learned about secular meetings, and she came back, and I guess she came to a meeting where me and Joe were at, and then she came to the Kansas City meetings, and she's going to those. And I'm still not going to those, but I'm glad that you're going. And that's kind of cool. I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
Very cool. Very cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. And I got another question kind of along these lines. I think I actually know how you're going to answer this one, but I'll just go ahead and ask it anyway. It's kind of interesting. So would you find it difficult to sponsor someone who's a believer?
No,
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, so because I have.
Yeah, I know you have. Yeah, so. And I would have no problem with it whatsoever. I really wouldn't. I think it's great. It's easy for me to see. Like if someone relies on a power greater than themselves that's external from them to do the same things that we do, I'm fine, great. I would encourage that. I would have no problem with that either. So. And I know it works the other way too. I mean, there are people out there who are believers who wouldn't really have any issue sponsoring someone who doesn't believe. So
right, yeah. There are lots of people like that as well. But yeah, one of the people I'm sponsored, it's been over 10 years now, and she's LDS Mormon, and and so and we differ politically in just about every way, and yet this works really well, and I learn a lot from her as well, and she's contributed to my sobriety. It helped me to think about things in different ways, and continue to seek out alternate ways of explaining things, so I think it's helped a lot of people. So not just her and I. But yeah, I think we all do basically the same things. Ideally, I am a little biased in thinking that because a lot of us who are secular have to translate things, that I feel like we have a better idea of what the steps are about and the principles behind them and such. But again, I am biased in that. And yeah, so no, I don't think that it's a problem. And it brings me to a question that I was going to, ask you, but it kind of goes along the same lines on that. I've seen a lot of questions in our group about sponsorship during the pandemic. So new people coming in, discovering secular AA and your podcast and the group and stuff, and wondering how to get a sponsor or go through the steps. So I wondered what your thoughts were about as a newcomer, if you were coming in right now, what do you think would be the best way to approach that?
It's really interesting that there are people that are coming into AA, their first experience with it being online through the Zoom meetings. And that is really interesting. It does give you a whole different twist on things. I guess I did benefit from sponsorship when I was getting sober early on. And I had different sponsors during different phases of my development, I guess. In the very beginning, though, my first sponsor was the guy who walked into my first meeting and offered me the coffee. And he was so great during those first, 9 months, I guess, when he just basically encouraged me to just go to meetings. He said, "Don't you worry about anything else, just go to meetings." And he was right. That's really what I needed at that time, was just to kind of go to meetings and kind of soak things in. But then after a while, I did move on to another sponsor where we because I was interested in doing the steps like I've been hearing other people doing. And it was helpful. We did it the way that we did it back then. But I would say for someone now, I wouldn't rush. I don't think you need to really rush into it. I think there should be some caution. I think that, I would recommend going to meetings and getting to know people, and maybe you can make friends from some of the people that from these meetings. A lot of the meetings people will talk and chat afterwards for 10 or 15 minutes, and you can also even ask during a meeting, if anybody would be willing to talk to you afterwards, and people would be. And that would be a good thing to do. And then maybe establish some trust, and so if there's somebody where you're comfortable with the person, then that might be a good fit where that person can help you through the path that they've traveled, So I think that would probably be a good approach. I would be, I always caution with sponsorship. I think that more often than not, it's a good experience, but you do have to be somewhat careful. But I think maybe online is a little bit safer. I don't know, but I don't know if that's a good answer or not. But then once you get a sponsor and it's someone who is familiar with going through the process of the steps in a secular way, just remember that they're just sharing their experience, and your experience might be similar to theirs. It might be very different than theirs. But that's all we can do with each other, is share our experience. And that's what a good sponsor will do is, this was my experience. This is how I went through it. And they just kind of guide you through, the process, based upon their experience. And, that's how I see it anyway. So.
Right. Yeah. Our stories or our experiences are superpower. A friend, Eli, likes to say. But yeah, I would go along the same things. What I'm noticing is that, if you're new, going to Zoom meetings and finding a couple that you really like and consistently showing up so that people can get to know you, And it's pretty much the same in, when we're doing in-person meetings, is that oftentimes people will, help you out and give you their phone number to call and stuff. But, some of us don't always do it right away because we've seen so many people go in and out. And so seeing, someone show up consistently at a meeting helps us trust that this is something that you want to do. So getting to know people that way is one way, and hearing their stories and seeing if, it sounds like they, would be able to help you. It might not be a good fit or a good match. Maybe you're somebody that really wants somebody who's kind of more like a boot camp drill sergeant type thing, because, that's what you need. You need more discipline in your life. And so that person would, there are people like that can help you out. For a lot of us, for me, I did not need that. I already have that in my head. And so I needed somebody who could show me, unconditional positive regard, I guess. And that's, what I sought out and what I've received in both of my sponsors. And then as far as like taking steps, not everybody does, it's not like a requirement, nor is getting a sponsor. If you're really struggling, then I would definitely try to get mental health therapist first, and then if you and then go that direction, because that might actually be more helpful. But I am seeing people starting secular step groups where they talk about the steps, and so that's one way to go about it. I know of at least two in the California area right now, but I know that there's several going on. Also, if you're attending meetings, I know, like in the Sober She-Devils, that some of the women in there, just a few of them, got together on their own and went through Staying Sober Without God. And so they did the steps using that book in a 3 to 4 person small group format. And so that's another way. And so if you're interested in something like that, bringing it up at the group that you're Zooming into regularly might be a good way to do that. And then as far as sponsorship in general, I'm finding now, particularly during the pandemic, that I see a lot more of just peer advising rather than thinking of things in a sponsorship type of a pattern. So, the traditional sponsorship is somebody who's got a little bit of time and has done the steps, and then they take you through the steps and blah, blah, blah. And then it just always feels kind of like a hierarchy, even if it's not intended to. And now with Zoom, it seems like, at least to me, in some of the meetings I attend, that's evened out a little bit, and time, doesn't matter as much, and that people are going to people who have the experience that they're seeking. So if somebody's struggling with a teenage, hellion or something, they can, ask somebody that's shared a little bit about surviving that sober, if they could talk after the meeting, or and so instead of having like one person that you go to with all of your stuff, I think people are starting to branch out and have it be more of like a peer mentorship, and so I like that.
I do too. I like that a lot. I think that's the way it really probably should be.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. Ed has a comment going back to, can an atheist sponsor someone who's a believer? He says, as an atheist, he can help anyone, though he prefers to help agnostics and atheists. He was even called a God-fearing Christian once after a meeting. But this is what he wrote that I found really interesting. He says, the language I use is neutral in viewpoint. I talk like an agnostic without coming off as an agnostic. You know what? I can do the same thing. I find it, that's so interesting. It's kind of funny. Every once in a while, I've done this a couple times. I've spoken at another group, and I didn't say that I'm an atheist, right? But I go through my story, and I even talk about the steps a little bit. I never mention God or anything, and nobody's the wiser. No one thinks anything.
Right.
They don't even pick up on that I'm an atheist. Right. So, but I gave them a completely secular, version of my recovery. So yeah, I can do that too. I think that's really cool that that you do that, Ed, because it's. Yeah, it almost is. If you just stick to, your experience and what you did, it's pretty much the same as someone who might believe that there's a God that's helping them with it. So that's really interesting. Good comment. Good comment there. So I had another silly question. I'm even afraid to ask it. I will go ahead and ask it though. And you don't have to go into a lot of detail on this one, but what rules should we have for an AA Facebook group?
Oh man. Wow.
Because our group basically has no rules right now other than it's like, try just be decent. But I don't know.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work to just have a be decent, because that means a lot of different things to,
it does.
all of us.
You have to be kind of specific, don't you?
Yeah. So I think that so some open-mindedness, definitely, but I would probably ask some questions when people ask to join, and have it that they agree to these, to be polite, and to, like if a moderator, takes something down, don't argue with the moderators, things like that, some basic like group moderation stuff. And then having like a group of moderators, so that if somebody does get upset, they can't say that, John S. is a jerk and runs a terrible group, because it's not just you deciding whether or not something, got out of line or something along those lines. But yeah, I would get a small group together to decide on some questions. And then that way, if somebody doesn't like the way that the group is moderated, they can look back and be able to find a group that moderates in a way that's more congruent with their thinking.
And, as a group grows, there's probably more of a need for it. We've got almost 2,000 people in our group now, and it's a pretty active group, and sometimes we get people that come in. The vast majority of people that come in are earnest and they're really interested in this. But there are, every once in a while, you get someone who's just there to cause trouble. I pretty much am pretty good at spotting them and getting them out pretty quickly. What I have an issue with is sometimes someone might post something and other people are offended by it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. And then other times I see something that it kind of bugs me. I'll tell you what freaks me out, what I don't like. And pictures of Jesus freak me out. I don't know why. I hate them. And people will sometimes post like a funny comic of Jesus doing something, and they just freak me out. I just don't like those. But I know that people sometimes, that are just being funny, but I don't know. It just bugs me for some reason.
Yeah. Well, and you can put it in there, and there are other groups that they can post their funny pictures of Jesus in. So that's the other thing, is that it's like, this isn't the only group out there. And if it doesn't suit you, then there are lots of groups.
I guess it's the religion bashing that kind of bugs me. It's like, I might even agree with you. I'm not crazy about religion, but that's not really what this is about. It's, so that's almost like talking politics almost, So, okay, those are good points there. Oh, Joe has a comment. What's Joe have to say there? He says, can you imagine all those people at a conference? You mean the people from the Facebook group? Yeah, that would be funny. That'd be cool. Yeah. I mean, it's a nice group, I have to say. And yeah, that would be kind of fun. We should maybe think, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I get myself in trouble. Anyway. Okay. Do you have a question you want to ask?
Yours seem to be a lot more fun, but I'll ask one that's like that's maybe difficult and might annoy you. Right. Is there any passage or phrase in the Big Book that you still find helpful?
Oh boy. Let's see. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect of alcohol, something along those lines from the doctor's opinion. We drink for the effect. And then after having had one, something happens in the bodily and mentally sense, something along those lines. But I can't, I'm kind of proud of myself. I don't remember it verbatim anymore, but I think that would be it. Memorized. I think that would be a good one that, from the doctor's opinion, I guess it just comes to mind. But the other one that I don't even agree with anymore, but it does give me pause and causes me to think, is selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. And it's like, I have to be careful with that, I guess. I mean, that was something that I relied on a lot in my third, fourth year in the program. And in one sense it was bad because I saw myself as a selfish bastard and
Right.
I was beating myself up a little bit. But on the other hand, it was good because it did cause me to stop and it was, which is new for me, to stop and actually look at my reactions and my relationships differently.
Yeah.
I think I would word it different now. But
Yeah, I think I would say something like we lacked self-awareness. Because, there's a positive and a negative to it. But,
yes,
that's what I think, we were seeking is some self-awareness. So both the positive and, because a lot of us, I know for me, it was difficult for me to be able to list, if I'd been asked a bunch of good things about myself when I first got sober. I mean, my sponsor had to work with me on not beating myself up. Like, literally, she'd tell me to stop putting myself down. And then I'd be like, yeah, that's stupid of me to put myself down all the time. And she'd be like,
I understand.
So I do it.
I often hear women that will say, that, they couldn't relate to the big book because it was written by these egotistical guys and everything. And they're from where they were coming from. It was more that they needed some lift. They needed some self-esteem. Like, I was the same damn way. I did not like myself. I had very low self-esteem. I was very withdrawn. I was not the egotistical person. I was maybe egotistical in a different way, but I was not the power driver. I was not that type of a person at all. And, but unfortunately what I did is, I tried to fit into that concept. But yeah, that was a deal for me too. And I had to be, and also suffering from depression, it was kind of a difficult deal to go through. But yeah, I'm with you on that. I like that lacking self-awareness, because that is true. I mean, I mean, especially when I was drinking, there was really never any thought of, why I'm reacting as I am. There was never any introspection whatsoever, when I was drinking. I'm sure that's true for any of us. So yeah, that's a good question, actually. Very good question. Okay. Here's kind of an interesting, could be a controversial question, I suppose. Should AA World Services publish a new book that addresses the program of recovery?
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, they have a publishing house, or,
I know they're a publisher, but they haven't published anything since 1970 something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, why shouldn't they? It doesn't mean that, that they have to burn and destroy all the old versions of the book, So yeah, I mean, they could even just, do a whole new book, that's about Alcoholics Anonymous, and, and we won't refer to it as the big book. It'll be this book. But yeah,
I think they would be smart to do that.
Yeah, more contemporary, and talks a little bit more, at least about what our the advancement and growth of understanding addiction, or substance use disorder, or whatever. I mean, we've come a long ways since the book was written. So yeah, and more contemporary stories.
It would be so easy to do. There are so many talented people in the fellowship. And they have the resources. They're, like you say, they're a publisher, right? They have the resources to do it. And why not? I mean, good God. I mean, and they could be written in such a way that it is more inclusive of everybody, and in a more modern language. And I mean, I could just see it. But yeah, the last time they really published anything, I guess, that was addressing recovery was Living Sober, right? Mm-hmm. And that was in the 1970s, I guess the mid-70s or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Yeah, so that's the last time. And I don't see any reason why they couldn't do something like that. The only thing they publish nowadays are pamphlets, and nobody ever really reads pamphlets. So yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. That would be a good idea. And Joe says, who in the world would write it? That's a good question. How would that even be done?
How was it done in the first time? It's like a bunch of several people, and then one person is kind of like the main person that tries to keep the voice together, but doesn't do a very good job of it. But yeah, just people people were very opinionated, all of us. And so, so we just all throw in what we think it should be, and they get some editors and piece it together. And it's just not that hard.
No.
It's
you could do it as like a committee. You could have like one main guy or girl or whatever write it, and then they bring it to the committee. Another thing you could do is do like a wiki, put it online and have people from all over the world add to it. It could be like a living document. You can just keep adding to it or something like that. You could do both, have a book that from a committee, and you can do a wiki online or something like that. But, there should be something other than the grapevine that gives voice to the fellowship today, our current experience today. And especially with the medium that we have now, where anybody can kind of write something, so.
Right.
But yeah, I think ideally it would be getting someone who knows how to write, and getting a diverse group of people together who could come up with a nice book, and then take it to the General Service Conference and have everybody, go through it and approve it, whatever. And there you go. Get your book. The Grapevine publishes books all the time. So yeah, it can be done. Good question, Joe. And interesting. I thought that's how you would answer that one. Robert B. Since AA claims not to be a religion, there's no reason not to revise the book, since some claim it is only a guidebook. Some claim it's only a guidebook. Yeah. Since AA claims not to be a religion, there's no reason not to update the book. Yeah. You're right. I see what you're saying, because if you're a religion, then you can't change the Bible, right?
It's a sacred text.
Yeah, because the Bible, it's not a sacred text. Yeah, that's a good point.
If they want to show that they're not a religion, they would put out something.
Yeah, you would evolve over time with new information and put new stuff out. Yeah, good point.
So, you can have it as a historical document. I
agree.
I think most people would agree with that it's, useful for a historical document, and would be, I probably would use it a lot more if that were the case. I'd be like, oh, look back here, they thought this, and this is how we think of it now, and blah, blah, blah. But yeah,
I do. I find it kind of weird that I don't use it anymore myself personally, and that my group doesn't use it. And cause sometimes I have the feeling that nobody really uses it anymore, but I know that's not true. Every once in a while I'll run into somebody who thinks it's a great book. So, different strokes for different folks.
Right.
So,
yeah.
This is a good question. My thoughts on this one, I don't know where I feel anymore, but what are your thoughts about anonymity? And I have a hard time pronouncing it.
I thought you were going to say Eminem. I'm like, well, he's an interesting rapper, and he's anonymity. So it depends on what level we're talking about. I personally talk about being in recovery, and so on my sobriety anniversary, I will probably post something about it on my regular Facebook thing, because I think it's important that people know that it's possible, and if they're struggling, somebody that they can talk to about it. As far as other people's, I don't feel, or I feel like I need to honor their anonymity, as in, not walk up to them at the grocery store and say, hey, that was a great meeting the other day, or, or post something on their Facebook or anything like that. And I have been around long enough to have people, message me and ask me, how do you know this person, or something like that. And I just generally say that we have mutual friends, and that kind of stuff. It's usually pretty easy to, because I belong to several anonymous groups, not just 12-step groups. So in general, I'm like, just don't ask that if you come to one of my gatherings where they know me from. Ask them what they do, or what do they enjoy in life, or, what's their philosophy about soda pop? I don't know. So along those lines, I do also think that not the anonymity as far as, press, radio, and films, as in, you and I don't claim that we are AA. Exactly. And so the stuff we discuss on here is the truth, and we're the voice. So I think it's still important to have it that, that there's not one person, celebrity or not, who's the voice of AA. So in that letting people know, that are in my life or my community or whatever. I think that it's my thing to decide whether I want to be anonymous or not. And for me, I don't. So yeah, it's part of who I am. It's a big part of who I am. Not that that's solely, the thing. I know that some people are like, well, this isn't just me. It's like, well, yeah, if I introduce myself with all the things I am, I'm a vegan dog owner, whatever. There's lots of stuff that I am. I talk about this though, because a lot of people don't. And it can be difficult for people and cause emotional suffering. And so it's the same reason why I talk about relationship and difficulties in relationship, because we don't talk about those in general. And so people suffer because they think that, life's supposed to go a certain way and it's not going that way and they don't know what to do. So yeah, I guess I'm just a loudmouth, but I'm okay with that.
I tend to see it that way too. I mean, I'm
a loudmouth?
No. I mean, about anonymity, about kind of being like,
I know, I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, being open, like, I'm still somewhat reserved, I guess. Like, I'm at work, I am. I tend not to post anything on my public Facebook page, but I'm getting a little bit looser with that now. I don't think I would have too much of a problem at work. But that's not really the anonymity that they're talking about. When I read the anonymity tradition, it's more about like not being a promoter of AA, and I buy into that. I'm not out there to promote AA or say that I'm the person that knows about it, and none of that, or capitalize from it or anything like that. So yeah, I'm pretty anonymous, I guess, on the podcast. I don't use my last name. There's been a few times when my anonymity was broken, but that wasn't a big deal to me. I don't know. I'm like what Ed says here. Let eliminate the stigma. I do believe that we should be open when it makes sense to be open. Not to hide.
You can just say recovery. It's really, you don't have to say that you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, psst, I'm a member of AA. Yeah. I mean, for me, sometimes it's been embarrassing, not because it's a meeting for alcoholics, but because of the religious aspect. So that's actually been, the main times that I've not shared, about it, or that I've been worried about it or whatever, is because of the, what people think about AA. And most of the people that I associate with do not think highly of it. And so I just say recovery, and, or I'll say like 12-step, community, which can be anything. And, because there's 12-step groups for whatever you want. So I don't know. I just don't think that it's that big a deal.
I've seen it carried too far sometimes, and it gets kind of tricky with the internet too, I guess. But I'm much more comfortable and relaxed with it than I ever used to be. So yeah, I'm not a militant person one way or the other with it, but I do believe strongly with confidentiality and respecting what someone says in an AA meeting. And like you said, don't go outing them as someone that's in AA and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Joe says, I know several people that have business cards and it says recovery coach. Well, recovery coach is becoming a thing now. I was actually did a podcast with somebody from Connecticut. We just posted episode 181, and he decided to use his time during quarantine to become a recovery coach and take classes. And it is kind of interesting. They have a program here in Missouri too. They call it peer to peer something. Anyway. I kind of think it's a good thing to do. I mean, I think I might be interested in doing that. I don't know if I would actually be a recovery coach, but I think it would be interesting to learn about it and gain some skills that way. But it's actually kind of a good thing that states are doing that. So what's happening is the states are actually certifying people as recovery coaches. And so these people, they actually get some training too, so they take the course work, and then they have to do some field work. But basically all it does, it gives you like, it helps that person be a good peer support for another person in recovery,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because I've considered it as well because it's basically what I do. I just don't get paid for it. But yeah, I think it would be great in the sense that it would give some of these people who do sponsor some actual training and how to, work with other people in a way that is not emotionally coercive or possibly, abusive. So I think it's a good idea, although I think that, there's been some difficulty within the counseling sector on, what these positions are and what they mean. But I think they're going to become more prevalent because it is a way to get more people help for a lower cost. So just like, nurse practitioners and, that kind of stuff are going to become more prevalent because they'll go to places and do the kind of care that somebody with a PhD, a MD can't afford to do because they're paying off school loans. So I think it's going to be used more in that aspect. And they are using them in like the emergency rooms and things like that.
That's right.
Having people go, whereas they don't, allow AA, plus you can't say it.
Right.
I'm here with AA to help so-and-so, but a peer recovery coach could do that. So.
Now, Tracy has a question. I think that you're going to be better at answering than me, but are there any non-recovery resources, authors, books, podcasts, et cetera, that you turn to for inspiration and insight? I know that you do.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of them. So I've been trying to pick a couple. I like Being Well with Rick Hansen and Forrest Hansen. He's a psychiatrist, I believe, and it integrates a lot of mindfulness with neurobiology, and so that's been very helpful to me to understand that that connection, and it's and I like the science behind how he explains some mindfulness concepts. So it helps me to, because I have like a little woo factor in my mind that when I hear some things, I'm like, oh, is that woo woo? And I, and so I'm like, I'm not putting any sort of rocks, on different parts of my body to try to heal myself. But that's not what it's like. So I really like, I like that. I look at a lot of stuff on trauma. So, I like, Gabor Mate and Peter Levine, Waking the Tiger. I like The Body Keeps the Score with Dr. van der Kolk. Those are some of the things, the books and stuff. Alanis Morissette, I've mentioned it before. She has a podcast called Conversation with Alanis, and she has a lot of experts on there, including, I think, all of the people that I just mentioned, maybe not van der Kolk, where she talks with them about different aspects of not necessarily recovery, but betterment or, mental health stuff or relationship or, all of those things that I guess some people would consider in the spiritual realm. And she, and I think she uses spiritual language when she's talking about it quite a bit, but I'm able to translate, so it doesn't bother me. But yeah, I really like her podcast as far as, a betterment or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Well, something I'm doing now, it's not really in the way of like recovery stuff, but I'm taking a course right now on Coursera that I'm enjoying. Mm-hmm. It's about writing, and I'm reading a book about trying to improve my writing, and it kind of helps me. I mean, I like doing it. It just gives me something to do that takes me out of. It's something I want to get better at anyway. I'm interested in it, and when I'm focusing on that, I don't really think about the clamor of the world and all of that.
Right.
So. Right.
Yeah. A book in that area that I like is The War of Art. It's like breaking through the blocks and win your inner creativity battles by Stephen Pressfield.
Oh, that sounds good.
And so, so
I'm
that's
reading right now. I'm reading On Writing Well by William Zinser. Have you read that?
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
It's kind of good. Well, we've gone over an hour. That's pretty good. It's been fun. I've enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you all, and thank you for your comments. Thank you for the call, Fred. Those were great questions and comments that came from the YouTube and Facebook chat. That's really great. It's kind of fun to have this opportunity to spend this evening with you guys and have a little meeting and have a little party. So there we go. We're going to dance ourselves on out of here. That's it. It's another episode. We'll be back again next week. And, of course, I'll be posting some other episodes here during the week as well. So y'all take care. Have a good night. We'll be back again next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.